My name is Violet Mercer. I'm 29 years old, and 6 hours ago, I was supposed to get married. Instead, I'm alone in an upstairs bridal suite, still half dressed for a ceremony that never happened, listening to music drift up from a reception that is no longer a wedding reception at all. It has become something stranger than that, something humiliating, something surreal, and in a way I never expected, something that saved me from breaking in private. 5 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, my phone buzzed. I remember exactly where I was standing when it happened. I was in front of the mirror, veil pinned, bouquet waiting nearby. The room smelling like roses, hairspray, and untouched champagne. For one hopeful second, I thought it was going to be a sweet message from Adrian. Something nervous, affectionate, sentimental. The kind of note people send right before they promise each other forever. Instead, it said, "Violet, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I reject you. I reject you." Those were the words. Not a call, not a conversation, not even a cowardly excuse delivered out loud. Just a sentence on a screen while 200 people waited downstairs for our lives to begin. At first, I didn't even feel the pain. I felt disbelief. I read it again, then again, as if repetition might make it mean something else. But it didn't. The words stayed cold, formal, distant, almost absurd in their cruelty. My maid of honor, Naomi, was the first person to notice something was wrong. "Vi?" she asked, stepping closer. "What happened?" I turned the phone toward her without speaking. She read the message, and all the color drained out of her face. "You're joking." "I wish I was." Her eyes flashed with instant anger. "Where is he?" That question landed hard, because it told me something before I was ready to say it. This didn't feel like panic. It felt like movement, like a decision already made. "I don't know," I said, and I truly didn't. Less than 15 minutes earlier, Adrian had looked calm. Too calm, actually, though I only realized that afterward. He had kissed my cheek, told me he'd see me out there, and walked away like a man headed toward a ceremony, not away from one. Standing there with his message in my hand, I understood that whatever this was, it had started before that text reached me. Naomi was already pacing. "We need to find him. We need to call someone. Violet, say something." But all I could think about was the ballroom below us. My parents, his parents, friends who had flown in. The band, the food, the officiant, the money. Months of planning, tens of thousands of dollars, and a room full of people waiting for a wedding that no longer existed. Somewhere inside me, shock burned itself out and left behind something colder. I asked Naomi for water, drank half the glass, set it down, and stood up. It wasn't strength. It wasn't calm in any noble sense. It was control, or at least the first rough shape of it. I couldn't control what Adrian had done, but I could control what happened next. When I opened the door, the officiant was waiting in the hallway with the polite concern of a man who knew the schedule was slipping and something was wrong. "Miss Mercer," he said gently, "is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but I need you to stand by." His expression tightened. "Should we delay?" I looked past him toward the staircase, where I could already hear the low, expectant hush of guests waiting for the music cue. Then I heard myself say, very steadily, "Actually, there's been a change of plans." Naomi caught my arm, but I was already moving. I walked down the hall, through the soft gold light, past the flowers, and candles arranged for a future Adrian had just blown apart. As soon as I appeared alone, the room changed. Faces lifted, smiles wavered. My mother's expression fell first. My father sat up straighter. His sister looked around as if the explanation had to be somewhere behind me. There was no music, no groom, just me. I stepped into the place where we were supposed to stand together and reached for the microphone. "Thank you all for being here," I said. My voice carried cleanly. No tremor, no crack. Even now, that surprises me. "There's been a development." The room went still. About 5 minutes ago, I received a text message from Adrian. A few people exchanged confused looks. I paused only long enough to make sure I wouldn't soften what came next. It said, and I quote, "Violet, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I reject you." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone covered her mouth. My mother looked like she might faint. Adrian's mother turned pale, and his father went rigid in a way that told me he had not known this was coming. "There will be no wedding today," I said. That was the moment the truth fully landed. Not delay, not nerves, not a mishap, an ending. Then I kept going. "The venue is paid for. The food is ready. The bar is open. The band is here. So tonight will not be a wedding reception. It will be a celebration of surviving something I should never have been put through. The silence that followed was so complete it almost sounded like impact. I lifted the glass of water beside me. To truth, I said, even when it arrives dressed as humiliation. To the people who showed up in good faith. And to dodging bullets no matter how late they reveal themselves. For a second, no one moved. Then Naomi started clapping. Sharp, defiant, immediate. My father followed. Then my cousins. Then my friends. The applause spread unevenly at first, then stronger, as though everyone was deciding in real time whether they were witnessing a collapse or a rescue. Some people left. Adrian's parents rushed out. His sister followed, burning with embarrassment or anger, maybe both. A few other guests slipped away behind them, but most stayed. That was the strange miracle of the night. Most stayed. They ate, they drank, they hugged me, they raised glasses and said things that were clumsy and kind and furious on my behalf. The band adjusted. The room shifted from stunned silence to something defiant. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was refusal. A collective refusal to let Adrian's betrayal become the final note of the evening. By midnight, the party had turned into a bizarre kind of release. Not normal, not graceful, but human. My father hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. His loss, he whispered. Catastrophic loss. Later, when Naomi brought me upstairs to the honeymoon suite the hotel had prepared for us, the silence hit differently. The candles, the champagne, the rose petals, all of it arranged for a beginning that had already died. She offered to stay. I almost said yes. Instead, I shook my head. If I can't survive one night alone, I'll feel weaker tomorrow. You are not weak, she said. I know, I just needed to prove it to myself. After she left, I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at my phone. Still nothing from Adrian. No explanation, no apology, no attempt to turn the text into panic or confusion. Just silence. That silence told me almost as much as the message itself. Men who break down usually circle back fast. They explain, they cry, they beg. Adrian didn't, which meant the text had not been a moment of chaos. It had been part of a plan. I opened my banking app and started adding up the cost of the day he had destroyed. Venue, catering, flowers, music, attire, travel, the honeymoon. More than $60,000. By the time I finished, the number didn't feel like money. It felt like smoke. And still, somehow, the deepest cut wasn't financial. It was this. Adrian had not vanished because he was overwhelmed. He had vanished because he was going somewhere. The next morning was uglier in a more practical way. There is nothing glamorous about unwinding a wedding after the bride has already stood in front of the guests and announced that the groom walked away. There are vendor calls, contracts, cancellations, awkward sympathy from people trying very hard to remain professional while also wanting the story. There are gifts to sort, room blocks to untangle, relatives to answer, and the endless humiliation of repeating some version of what happened until it starts to sound detached from your own life. My mother cried through most of it. My father became frighteningly efficient. Naomi stayed close, screening calls when she could, and threatening violence whenever someone from Adrian's side tried to minimize what he had done. As for Adrian, there was nothing. No call, no message, no explanation. Not for one day. Not for two. Not for three. At first, that silence hurt. Then it clarified things. If this had been a breakdown, there would have been noise afterward. Shame, apology, panic, anything. Instead, there was absence. Clean, deliberate, sustained. By the third night, I was back at my apartment in old sweats, standing barefoot in my kitchen and eating crackers because I couldn't summon the energy to cook when my phone exploded. Missed call, another, then texts. Violet, please answer. I made a mistake. Please talk to me. I stared at the screen without moving. Before I could decide what to do, Naomi called. You seeing this? She asked. Yes. I just got off the phone with Elena. Elena was one of those mutual acquaintances who always knew things a little too early and a little too vividly. And? I asked. Naomi exhaled. He didn't leave because he panicked. I closed my eyes. Who was she? Celeste. The name took a second to settle. Then I remembered Adrian mentioning her before, always in that carefully managed way people talk about an ex they claim means nothing. He had called her a mess, a phase, someone from a life he had outgrown. Hearing her name now, I understood those descriptions had probably been less truth than containment. Apparently they'd been back in touch for a while, Naomi said. Maybe longer than anyone realized. From what Elena heard, Adrian thought he was leaving with Celeste to start some dramatic new life. I leaned against the counter and said nothing. It fit too well. His calm that morning, the text, the disappearance, the silence afterward. But the plan fell apart fast, Naomi continued. The car, the image, the whole glamorous escape thing, a lot of it was bluff. And from everything people are piecing together, Celeste seems to have assumed Adrian was walking away from the wedding with access to a much more comfortable life than he actually had once he blew it up. That part landed cold. Not because I was shocked by greed, because I could suddenly see the shape of the mistake he had made. Whatever fantasy Celeste had sold him, it only worked if he could step out of my life without actually losing the security around it. When it became obvious there was no soft landing, Naomi said, they fought, badly. By Wednesday morning, she dumped him at a gas station outside another state. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Then the image formed fully. Adrian, my almost husband, stranded with a bag and no script left to follow after wrecking everything for a woman who had no intention of carrying him once the illusion cracked. I put a hand over my mouth, not to stop tears, but to stop the bitter laugh threatening to come out. My phone buzzed again. Violet, I love you. Please let me explain. Love. After all of this. Naomi was quiet on the line, waiting. I'm going to answer if he calls again, I said. Are you sure? No, but I want to hear how he tells this story now. Less than 2 minutes later, he called. His name lit up the screen like something from a different life. I answered, and before I could say a word, I heard him crying. Not polished crying, not controlled. Real panic. Violet, he choked out. Thank God, please don't hang up. I said nothing. Silence made him rush. I messed up. I know I messed up. Everything happened so fast. Celeste got in my head, and I wasn't thinking clearly, and there it was already. Confusion, pressure, her influence. The usual shelter of cowards who need the disaster to sound accidental. You weren't confused, I said. He stopped. You planned it, I continued. You had somewhere to go. You vanished. You sent me a message that said, I reject you, 5 minutes before our wedding. I didn't mean it like that. You typed it. His breathing turned ragged. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know what I was doing. No, you knew exactly what you were doing. What you didn't know was that it would collapse this fast. He started crying harder. I made a mistake, he said. A terrible mistake, but we can fix this. We can tell people I panicked. We can reschedule. Please, Violet. The audacity of that almost stunned me more than the betrayal itself. You ran away with your ex-girlfriend, I said. Silence. Then, smaller. I thought she meant it. I thought we were starting over. Of all the things he could have admitted, that was the most revealing. Not because it was honest in any noble sense, but because it exposed the core of it. He had gambled a real life on a fantasy and lost. And now? I asked. He didn't answer immediately, which told me everything I needed. I realized I love you, he said finally. No, I said. You realize the fantasy failed. He tried to deny it. He cried. He begged. He said he had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. That was the moment the last bit of doubt left me. He did not want forgiveness. He wanted re-entry. He wanted the stable life back. There is nothing to fix, I said. We're done. Please don't say that. I'm not the one who threw this away. Then I hung up and blocked his number. I expected collapse after that. Instead, I felt relief. Not clean relief, not complete relief, but enough to let me breathe. Then my phone rang again from another number. I already knew who it would be. Danielle. How dare you humiliate him like that? She snapped. The moment I answered. Reading that text in front of everyone, turning the reception into some kind of spectacle. What is wrong with you? I told the truth. You could have handled it privately. He could have left before the wedding. That silenced her for a second, then she changed direction. He made a mistake. He was under pressure. You should have protected him. Protected him from the consequences of abandoning me at the altar? He's your fiancé. He was, I said, past tense. She grew sharper then, accusing me of being cold, unforgiving, dramatic. But the center of her argument never changed. She believed I should have absorbed the damage quietly so Adrian could fail without public consequence. Then she asked the question that revealed everything. Where is he supposed to live? Not how are you? Not what did he do? Just logistics. Shelter. Rescue. That's not my problem anymore, I said. She called me heartless. I ended the call and blocked her too. Then I walked into the bedroom and looked around at the pieces of Adrian still scattered through my apartment. His jacket, his shoes, his charger by the outlet as if he planned to come back and resume the life he had set on fire. I opened a delivery app and arranged for every last item to be packed and sent to his parents' house. No confrontation, no reunion scene, no chance for him to stand in my doorway and turn remorse into a performance. If closure was going to exist, I was going to create it myself. The next few days were all logistics. Boxes, lists, receipts, signatures. There is something brutally clarifying about packing up another person's life after they have made it clear they no longer intend to share yours. I folded Adrian's shirts out of habit, not tenderness. Years of living together don't evaporate just because the truth arrives. Your body remembers systems long after your heart stops trusting them. His clothes went first, then shoes, books, chargers, watches, small pointless objects I once would have described as familiar. By the time the delivery service arrived, everything was lined up by the door like evidence. The driver glanced at the stack of boxes and asked, "Moving?" "Something like that," I said. I watched them carry everything out piece by piece. When the door finally shut behind the last box, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt reset. That should have brought peace, but instead it created room for the next wave. Rumors. They began indirectly. A cousin texting to ask if I was okay. A friend I hadn't heard from in months checking in with a tone that suggested she'd heard a version of the story already. By the third day, the shape of the rumor had become clear. I was controlling. I had pressured Adrian into marriage. He had snapped under the weight of my expectations. The text had been taken out of context. That last one almost made me laugh. Out of context. As though "I reject you" had some warmer meaning if tilted at the right angle. Naomi called that night, sounding furious. "Have you heard what they're saying?" "Yes." "And you're just letting it spread?" I lay back on the couch and stared at the ceiling. I'm not chasing lies in circles. But they're making you the villain. I know. She went quiet for a moment. "So what do you do?" "The truth," I said, "only where it matters." That became my approach. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't write some dramatic statement online. But when someone I cared about asked directly, I gave them the facts. He texted me 5 minutes before the ceremony. He wrote, "I can't do this. I reject you." Then he left with his ex-girlfriend. That's it. If they still seemed unsure, I showed them the message. That ended most conversations, because some pieces of evidence do not need interpretation, and that text didn't leave much room for imagination once people saw it with their own eyes. The gossip didn't vanish immediately, but it weakened. Facts have a way of doing that when they are calm and verifiable. Then the demands started. The first one came from an unknown number. "We need to discuss compensation." I read it twice, convinced I had misunderstood. Then another arrived. "You owe Adrian for the emotional stress you caused." I actually laughed that time, though it came out hard and humorless. It escalated from there. Emails, voicemails, messages from fresh numbers after I blocked the old ones. Danielle left one insisting Adrian had put time and effort into the relationship and deserved consideration. An email from someone on his side referred to shared responsibility and financial fairness, phrases so polished they almost disguised how detached from reality they were. The worst was a printed letter from his mother. It was polite, measured, almost elegant in tone, which somehow made it more offensive. She listed expenses, referenced their family's distress, and suggested I consider helping Adrian while he got back on his feet. I set the letter down very carefully, then called a lawyer. Not because I thought they had a case, because I wanted the entire thing ended by someone they couldn't emotionally manipulate. The consultation took less than an hour. By the end of it, my lawyer was openly amused. "Let me understand this," he said. He canceled the wedding by text, minutes before the ceremony, then left with another woman. "And now they want money from you?" "Yes." He leaned back in his chair. "That is not a legal argument. That is entitlement." For the first time in days, something in me loosened. "So I owe them nothing." "Nothing," he said. "No legal standing, no claim. If they continue, it becomes harassment." He drafted one formal email. "Violet Mercer considers this matter closed. Adrian unilaterally terminated the relationship and wedding plans. No compensation is owed. Any further contact will be treated as harassment." It was concise, cold, and exactly what the situation deserved. After that, the noise thinned fast. No more new numbers. No more emotional invoices disguised as morality. No more attempts to force me into cleaning up a disaster Adrian had created himself. And in the quiet that followed, one thought kept returning. The honeymoon. $18,000. Non-refundable. The exact overwater bungalow Adrian had obsessed over for months. At first, I had tried not to think about it. The trip felt too symbolic, too tied to the life he had ruined. But once the legal circus stopped, it returned to the center of my mind as something practical and unresolved. So I called the travel agency. After the usual hold music, a woman named Clara picked up. Once I explained the situation, she was kind without being intrusive. "I'm sorry," she said. "The package is non-refundable, but you do have options. You can convert the full value into travel credit, or you can change the name of the second guest and still take the trip." I looked out the window while she spoke, letting the choices settle. Save it for later, or reclaim it now. "What's the deadline?" I asked. 48 hours. I thanked her and hung up, then stood in my bedroom looking at the empty part of the closet where Adrian's things had been. That was when the answer arrived. I wasn't going to let the trip disappear, and I was definitely not going to let it remain a monument to what he had wrecked. If I was going to lose that much money anyway, then I was going to take something back from it. I called Naomi before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the second ring, already halfway into a joke. "If this is about finally setting his ugly sweaters on fire, I'm free." "What are you doing next week?" I asked. She paused. "Why do I feel like this is not a normal question?" "Because it isn't." Another beat of silence. "Violet," she said carefully, "what are we talking about?" "The Maldives." The silence on the other end turned absolute. "You're kidding." "I'm not." "The honeymoon?" "Yes." "The $18,000 honeymoon your ex treated like a personality trait for 6 straight months?" "That one." She let out a stunned laugh. "This is either the most unhinged or the most brilliant thing you've ever done." "Probably both." "When do we leave?" 3 days. "I'm in." That was it. No hesitation after the shock. Just instant loyalty, the kind that doesn't need processing once the emotional logic clicks into place. The trip itself felt unreal at first. First-class check-in, lounge access, champagne before boarding. Everything had been designed for romance, and yet none of it felt ruined anymore. The closer we got to the plane, the less the trip belonged to the broken version of my future, and the more it felt like something I was actively taking back. Naomi asked if I was okay at least 5 times before takeoff. "I think so," I kept saying, and by the time we boarded, I meant it. When we arrived, the resort was even more beautiful than the brochures had promised. The water looked impossible, too clear and too blue to feel entirely real. The staff welcomed us with effortless warmth. "Welcome, we've been expecting you." Not you and your husband, not your honeymoon, just us. That mattered more than I can explain. The bungalow was exactly the one Adrian had chosen. Private deck, glass floor panels, steps leading straight into the water. For a moment, standing there, I felt the ghost of the life that had been meant to happen inside that view. Naomi must have seen it on my face, because she stepped beside me and said quietly, "This isn't his anymore." She was right. So I exhaled and let the old version of the moment go. The first day was quiet. Not sad, just quiet. We swam, lay in the sun, and let our bodies catch up to the fact that the chaos had stopped. On the second day, we laughed more. On the third, Adrian came up only in passing. By then, the trip had stopped feeling symbolic and started feeling real. We went diving. Naomi nearly dragged the instructor back to the surface in a panic halfway through and then laughed so hard afterwards she cried. We ordered ridiculous room service one afternoon and watched the sunset from the deck with our hair still damp from the ocean. For the first time since the wedding, whole stretches of time passed without me thinking about Adrian at all. That mattered. Not because forgetting him was the point, because it proved he was no longer the center of the story. The photo happened on our last full day. We were standing on the deck with drinks in our hands, the ocean stretched behind us in every direction. Naomi looked at me and said, "You look different." "I always look good." She smiled. "That's not what I mean." I knew exactly what she meant. I looked lighter. Not healed, not magically transformed, but no longer crushed. She lifted her phone. "Stand there, don't overthink it." So I didn't. I stood in the late sun with the water behind me and let the moment exist. When she showed me the picture afterward, I barely recognized myself emotionally. The woman in that image did not look like someone waiting to be rescued from humiliation. She looked like someone who had already survived it. That night, I posted the photo to my private Instagram. No rant, no tag, no speech. Just one caption. "Making the best of an unexpected situation. Paradise found." That was all. I didn't post it for Adrian. I didn't even post it as revenge, not consciously. It was simply true. But truth has a way of traveling, especially when people on the edges of your life think they are being helpful by passing it along. A few days after we got back, Naomi called me laughing. "Danielle saw the photo." Of course she did. She lost her mind, called it disrespectful, asked how you could enjoy a trip that was supposed to be Adrian's honeymoon. I leaned back in my chair and smiled without meaning to. There it was again, that same astonishing entitlement. Even now, after he had walked away, I was apparently still supposed to move through my own life in a way that protected his feelings. And Adrian, I asked? Naomi's tone shifted. Not good. That made sense. The wedding could be explained away in his head. The gas station could be blamed on Celeste. But that photo was different. It made no accusation. It didn't mention him at all. It simply showed a reality in which I was fine, and perhaps even better than fine. He had planned for tears, outrage, maybe even bitterness. He had not planned for me to keep living beautifully without him. By the time we got back from the Maldives, the worst of the outside noise had already begun to die. The lawyer's email had done what my patience couldn't. It ended the demands. The rumor mill, deprived of new material, started to lose energy too. It turns out most smear campaigns collapse eventually when one side keeps improvising and the other side just stays close to the facts. I never heard from Adrian directly again. Not once. That silence, unlike the first one, no longer felt like strategy. It felt like defeat. Still, information has a way of reaching you after something like this. Mutual acquaintances, distant friends, people who hover near both sides without truly belonging to either. At first, I ignored anything I heard. Then, curiosity took over in small doses. Apparently, after Celeste left him, Adrian stayed with Danielle for a while. That alone said a lot. He had nowhere stable to go, and his own dramatic leap into freedom had shrunk fast into dependence. From what I heard, Danielle tried at first. She let him stay. She tried to help him regroup, but helping someone rebuild is one thing. Supporting someone who refuses to face what he did is another. Adrian did not come out of the fallout humbled. He came out bitter. He complained. About Celeste. About me. About how unfair everything was. He told the story as if disaster had happened to him rather than because of him. He didn't move with urgency. He didn't rebuild with purpose. He sulked inside the consequences and expected the people around him to absorb the discomfort. That lasted about 2 months. Then Danielle threw him out. I'm told it wasn't dramatic. No screaming match. No spectacular collapse. Just a limit finally reached. Even loyalty gets tired when it's asked to carry someone who keeps confusing consequence with persecution. After that, Adrian moved back in with his parents. He eventually found work. Some low-level administrative job, nothing close to the life he had imagined for himself, and certainly nothing close to the security he had casually assumed would still be there if his escape plan failed. That was the part I kept coming back to. He did not just lose me. He lost the structure around me, the stability, the future he had already started treating like something guaranteed. And the cruelest detail for him, I think, was that none of it disappeared. That life still existed. It simply continued without him in it. Celeste vanished completely, which was no surprise. People built on image rarely stay once the illusion stops paying. As for me, I was finally starting to feel something close to normal. Not triumphant, not theatrically transformed, just steadier. The first weeks had been awful. I had felt foolish, angry, publicly exposed. But the strange party on the night of the ruined wedding had kept shame from sealing over me in silence, and the trip had done something even more important. It reminded me that joy was still accessible without permission from the life I had lost. So I started rebuilding in quieter ways. I went back to the gym, first out of restlessness, then because it genuinely helped. I reconnected with friends I had neglected while wedding planning swallowed everything. I had dinners that involved no spreadsheets, no seating charts, no flower samples, no careful emotional management of another person's family. Eventually, I started dating again. Casually, lightly, nothing serious. The point was not replacement. It was openness. The understanding that what Adrian did had not closed the future. It had only changed it. And my apartment changed too. That surprised me the most. Once his things were gone and enough time had passed, the place stopped feeling haunted. It became mine again, not shared, not negotiated, not arranged around habits that no longer mattered, mine. There is a strange peace in that kind of ownership. A few times people asked me whether the Maldives trip had been revenge. I understood why they asked. The timing, the photo, the quiet satisfaction of it all. But revenge is too crude a word for what I actually felt. I wasn't trying to destroy Adrian. Life had already handled the destruction. What I wanted was reclamation. I wanted proof that the collapse he engineered was not going to define the shape of my life afterward. I wanted to take something expensive, beautiful, and thoroughly contaminated by memory and strip it of his ownership. That's what the trip did. That's what the photo did. Not as an attack. As evidence. Evidence that my life had not ended where he thought it would. 4 months later, everything is quiet. Not the tense kind of quiet that makes you brace for impact. A real quiet. The kind that arrives when there is finally nothing left coming at you. No messages. No legal nonsense. No rumors worth answering. No last desperate attempt at explanation. Just space. The lawyer's email ended the demands, and time did the rest. The rumors faded because stories built on distortion require constant maintenance, while the truth tends to survive on very little. I never posted a rebuttal. I never tried to perform my innocence. I just kept living, and eventually that became its own answer. As for Adrian, I never heard from him again. Not directly, but I heard enough. He stayed with Danielle until even she reached her limit. Then he moved back in with his parents. He found work, complained about it, complained about me, complained about the collapse of the life he had tried to trade for fantasy. From everything I heard, he still told the story as though he were the injured party. That no longer bothered me. By then, I could see the whole thing clearly. He had not ruined my life. He had ruined his access to the life he thought would always be there for him. That is a different kind of loss, and I think, for someone like Adrian, a harder one to live with. Because he did not just lose a fiancé. He lost a future he assumed was guaranteed. And the worst part for him is that the future itself didn't vanish. It simply went on without him. I'm good now. Not in the polished way people say it when they want to sound strong. I mean it plainly. I'm good. The financial hit was real. More than $60,000 disappeared into the wreckage of one terrible decision that wasn't mine. There's no elegant way to frame that. It hurt. It still stings if I think about it too hard. But money can be rebuilt. What mattered more was everything I got back. My self-respect, my clarity, my ability to trust my own judgment again, and a sharp understanding of what I will never accept from anyone in the future. I've gone back to work fully. I'm back at the gym. I see my friends more. I laugh without forcing it. I date when I feel like it. Nothing serious yet, but seriousness no longer feels like the only path to meaning. That's freeing. Most of all, I come home to an apartment that feels like mine, in a way it hadn't for a long time. That detail sounds small until you've lived through betrayal. Then you understand how much peace there is in a space that no longer holds negotiation, resentment, or someone else's unfinished mess. If there is a lesson in any of this, it's that revenge is often misunderstood. It isn't always confrontation. It isn't always punishment. Sometimes it is simply demonstration. A quiet, undeniable demonstration that your life continues, that what someone tried to break did not stay broken, and that the future they treated as disposable was never theirs to reclaim on demand. That is what the Maldives photo became in the end. Not a weapon, a fact. Proof that I kept going. Proof that I was allowed to enjoy beauty after humiliation. Proof that he was no longer the center of the story. I don't hate Adrian. That would require more energy than he deserves. What I feel now is smaller, steadier, and much more useful. Finality. He made his choice. I made mine. Now we are both living with them. There was no grand final confrontation, no cinematic moment where everything came full circle and somebody said the perfect line. Life is usually less theatrical than that, even after something dramatic. What there was, instead, was consequence. Quiet, lasting consequence. He walked away from a real future for a fantasy built on bluff. I stayed, endured the humiliation, and rebuilt. That is the whole story. And honestly, that is more than enough.